There were 67 people in that ballroom. I counted. I stood by the glass bar, gripping a watered-down cocktail, counting heads while pretending I wasn't watching my wife melt into another man's arms. 67. Including the band. Not counting me. Because I wasn't really there, was I? My body was present, pressed in a stiff rental suit that smelled like other people's lives. But my presence? My existence? That had evaporated somewhere between the first clink of champagne glasses and the moment her hand found his chest. You ever realize you're the only one not invited to your own humiliation? That's what it felt like. The guy, his name didn't matter then, and it sure as hell doesn't matter now, was charming in the worst way. The kind of man who says just friends with one hand on her lower back and the other stealing your oxygen. He had the audacity to wink at me. Wink. She didn't stop him. They glided to the center of the room as the music shifted from jazz to something slow, indulgent. Their bodies moved in sync, her laughter rang out louder than the horns. And that's when it hit me. She didn't forget I was there. She just didn't care. Everyone clapped when the song ended. Everyone but me. My hands were in my pockets, fingers curling around the receipt for the drinks I bought, both of them hers. I didn't plan to leave. I didn't storm out or break anything or scream. That would have required emotion. But I felt hollow, like a background extra in someone else's fairy tale. So I walked. Out of the ballroom. Out of the hotel. Out of whatever illusion I'd been clinging to. It was raining. One of those soft, misty rains that doesn't make noise but still soaks you through. I stood under a flickering street lamp, coatless, shoelaces untied. She hadn't texted. Not yet. I told myself I'd go back. That I just needed air. But the truth was already clawing its way up my throat. It wasn't just the dance. It wasn't just the hand on her waist. It was that she didn't even look for me. She didn't glance over her shoulder. She didn't mouth "be right back." She didn't care that I saw everything. And the most pathetic part? I still wanted her to. I got home before midnight. The lights were still on. Her favorite mug sat on the counter, half full. I stared at it like it could explain something, why she smiled at him differently, why I'd been shrinking in our shared home for months, why love feels like a trick mirror when you're the only one still looking in. When she finally walked through the door, wet from the rain, heels in her hand, she had the audacity to laugh. "You left," she said, like I'd forgotten my keys. "Seriously, Henry? It was just a dance." But the silence I gave her wasn't anger. It was the sound of a man who'd finally accepted something unspeakable. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just the guy who drove her to the party. And she had no idea what I had seen or what I had planned next. She went straight to the bedroom, still chuckling under her breath, the kind of awkward laugh people use when they're trying to cover something up. Like she knew she should be embarrassed but was hoping I'd be the one to apologize again for taking things the wrong way. I followed her. Not because I wanted to argue. Honestly, I didn't even have words at that point. I just needed to see if she'd show any sign that she felt something about what happened. Even an ounce of guilt. But instead, she sat at her vanity and started wiping off her lipstick like it was just any other Tuesday night. "You know what, Henry?" she muttered as she smeared the red from her lips with a cotton pad. "You're so sensitive lately. It's exhausting." That was the first crack in my silence. I tilted my head, staring at her through the mirror's reflection. "Sensitive?" I repeated, barely able to hear myself over the dull roaring in my ears. "You call it sensitivity when I watch my wife slow dance with another man like I don't exist?" She met my eyes in the mirror. "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it to me. What was it like?" She paused, just long enough to let me hope she might actually give a real answer. Then she stood, tossed the makeup wipe in the trash, and said, "It was just a dance, Henry." God, grow up. I should have screamed. I should have cried. I should have thrown something or stormed out or demanded the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the napkin I'd stuffed there before I left the gala. A fancy, monogrammed square folded in half. I unfolded it slowly and placed it on the dresser next to her. There was a number written on it. A man's name. And a little message. "Call me if you ever get tired of dragging dead weight." She stared at it like it was in a foreign language. "I saw him hand it to you," I said calmly. "You slipped it into your clutch while I was ordering your second drink." That was the moment. The exact moment the room shifted. Her eyes widened just a bit too late. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. And for the first time in what felt like years, she didn't have a line ready. The silence was glorious. I turned and left the room. I didn't need to watch her fumble for excuses. I'd done enough of that in this marriage for both of us. I went to the garage, sat in my old Corolla, let the engine run and the heater hum. I didn't even drive anywhere. Just sat there, staring at the closed door like it might open and reveal a version of her I missed. But it didn't. Instead, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're a better man than she deserves. That dance wasn't innocent. Sorry you had to see it." I read it 4 times. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't even know who it was. And honestly, that scared me more than anything else. Someone else had noticed. Someone else saw what I was never supposed to see. Back inside, she was pacing, holding her phone, probably deleting texts. She looked up when I walked in and launched into full performance mode. "It wasn't what you think," she started. "That guy, I barely even know him. He's new. He's weird. Everyone was dancing and I didn't want to be rude." I raised a hand. "I'm done listening." "No, Henry, don't do this. You're making a mountain out of it." "Out of a betrayal?" I interrupted. "Because that's exactly what it was. You made a choice. You made it the second you looked at him like that. The second you forgot I existed." She stepped toward me, desperate now. "You're overreacting. I love you." "I do." The silence between us then was brutal. I finally asked, "Then why did it feel like I was the only one in that entire building who didn't matter?" Her face collapsed. No more smugness. No more deflection. She opened her mouth to speak, but all that came out was the small, pitiful gasp. Like she'd finally run out of lines. And that sound, the sound she made when she realized I wasn't bluffing, stuck with me for the rest of the night. Because I wasn't just walking away from an argument. I was walking toward the truth. And the next day, that truth came knocking, in a way neither of us could have predicted. I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. She stayed on her side of the bed, breathing shallow and pretending to drift off, but I could tell by the way she shifted every few minutes that her mind was spiraling. And mine? Mine was somewhere between numbness and a volcano. Boiling quietly, silently, beneath everything I thought I knew. I didn't say a word that night. I just laid there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan spinning too slowly like it was mocking the chaos in my chest. I kept waiting for something, an apology, a confession, a moment of clarity. But all I got was silence and the soft hum of guilt she wasn't brave enough to name. At 6:14 a.m. I got out of bed. No alarm. No sound. Just a quiet, deliberate choice. She stirred slightly when I stood, but I didn't look back. I went downstairs and sat in the kitchen in the dark, staring at the tile floor like it had the answers. My stomach felt hollow, but not from hunger. From the kind of betrayal that gnaws through you slowly like acid. And then my phone lit up. It was a text from an unknown number. No name. No greeting. Just this. "You deserve to know the whole story. Check the folder I airdropped last night." I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second, unsure if I was reading it right. Then I remembered the guy at the gala, the one running sound near the stage. He had been near me most of the night. We made eye contact a couple of times. I thought nothing of it. I opened my Files app and sure enough, there it was, a folder titled "For Henry." My fingers trembled as I tapped it open. Inside were 3 videos, each no longer than 30 seconds. Each like a bullet to the chest. The first one showed her and Kellen in the hallway behind the ballroom, alone, before the dance. He pressed her against the wall, whispered something into her ear, and she giggled. Not nervously. Not awkwardly. Like she was 12 glasses deep in comfort. The second showed the dance itself. But not from the front. From behind. From my vantage point. I saw myself standing there, holding drinks, eyes fixed on them while she twirled in his arms like they were characters in some romantic film. The third was her, slipping that napkin into her clutch. And then leaning in. Whispering something to him. Her lips moved slowly, but clear enough to read. "He won't say anything. He never does." I dropped the phone. It clattered against the tile, but I didn't move to pick it up. I couldn't move. Because that was it. That was the line. The moment. The confirmation. She knew what she was doing. She knew she was humiliating me. And worse, she counted on my silence. When she finally came downstairs, still in her robe, rubbing her eyes like we hadn't just shattered the foundation of our marriage 12 hours earlier, I didn't greet her. I didn't offer coffee. I just pointed to the phone still lying on the floor. "What's that?" she asked, her voice thick with faux innocence. "Evidence," I said. My voice didn't even crack. "I don't know how." She picked it up, swiped through the videos. I watched her face change in slow motion. First confusion, then realization, then fear, then that pathetic tactic I'd come to know so well, deflection. "Why are you spying on me, Henry? Do you know how creepy this is?" My laugh was bitter and sharp. I didn't record you. Someone else did. Because even strangers could see what I couldn't. I didn't do anything with him, she snapped. You did enough, I said. And you knew I wouldn't stop you. That's the worst part. Silence fell like a curtain between us. Then, without thinking, I stood, walked past her, and grabbed my coat. Where are you going? She asked. I don't know, I said. But for the first time in years, I'm going somewhere without you. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack a bag. I just left. My heart pounding, my hands shaking, my chest tight, but my mind finally, terrifyingly clear. What happens next? I didn't know. Not yet. But I had one lead. That anonymous number. Someone out there knew more than I did. Someone watched it all unfold and decided I deserved to know the truth. So I texted back. Tell me everything. The message came 5 minutes after I hit send. Meet me. Parking garage under the hotel. Second level, west corner. Noon. No name. No emojis. No hesitation. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. My gut told me not to go. Every movie, every cautionary tale screamed don't meet strangers from anonymous texts in dim concrete buildings. But then again, nothing about the situation felt like real life anymore. It already felt like I was watching it happen from the outside. So I went. I didn't tell Alora where I was going. I didn't even give her the satisfaction of knowing I was still in the same city. I left my phone tracker on just in case. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted someone to know what she'd driven me to. The hotel garage was mostly empty. Pale fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly blue tint. I parked and waited. At exactly 12:01, a beat-up gray hatchback pulled into the opposite space. The man who stepped out looked like someone you'd pass on the street and never remember. Slight frame, ball cap, faded hoodie. He approached slowly, cautiously, like he wasn't sure I was safe either. You're Henry? He asked. I nodded. And you're the one who sent me the videos? Yeah, he said, then added, I'm Marco. I used to work at her firm. The way he said used to told me everything. She fired you? I asked. He shook his head. No. Quit. 3 weeks ago. Couldn't take the politics. Couldn't take what I saw. He leaned against the hood of his car, crossed his arms, and looked at me with something that wasn't pity. It was worse. It was confirmation that I hadn't imagined it. That this wasn't about my insecurities or paranoia. That it was real. I was on the creative team, Marco continued. My desk was 2 cubicles down from hers. I never meant to get involved, but I noticed stuff. Late-night meetings. Long lunches that weren't on the schedule. Office doors locked. That kind of thing. I felt like my lungs had stopped working. You mean? I don't have footage of that, Marco said quickly. But yeah, it wasn't just a flirtation, Henry. That guy, Kellen, he was in her orbit way before the gala. What happened at the party? That wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time she stopped hiding it. I sat down hard on the concrete barrier behind me. My legs couldn't take it. The weight of it all, the build-up, the denial, the quiet erosion of trust, collapsed on top of me like a ceiling giving way. She used to talk about you, Marco said quietly. Back when she first joined. Said you were old-fashioned, but sweet. Said you made her feel safe. I blinked. That sounds like a compliment? Not the way she said it, Marco replied. She said it like it was a warning. Like being with someone stable meant she'd miss out on the drama. The excitement. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't deny how right it sounded. How well it fit with the past 6 months of cold shoulders, half smiles, and dead stares across the dinner table. Why help me? I asked finally. Why risk it? He shrugged. Because I've seen people get burned. And I figured, you deserve to know before she torched the rest of your life too. He handed me a flash drive. Just a small black one. No label. No markings. There's more on here, he said. Messages. Screenshots. Audio from one of their meetings. I recorded it by accident while testing mics. But once I realized what I had, I saved it. I didn't know what to do with it. Until I saw you that night. I turned the drive over in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have. I didn't want to believe it, I admitted. I thought I was just overthinking. Imagining things. Henry, Marco said gently, sometimes the hardest part isn't discovering the truth, it's accepting that someone you love could lie that easily. He didn't ask for thanks. Didn't stick around. He got back in his car and drove off without another word. I sat there for a long time after he left, staring at the drive in my hand. I didn't plug it in that day. I couldn't. Not yet. Because deep down I already knew what it would confirm. And I needed a second, just a second, to pretend I still didn't. When I finally walked back into the house later that afternoon, Elora was at the kitchen table. She had her laptop open, pretending to work. Her eyes flicked to me, then back down. "You've been gone for hours," she said. "Where'd you run off to?" I set the flash drive on the table, right next to her coffee mug. She looked at it, then looked at me. She didn't touch it. Didn't ask what it was. Didn't need to. Because her face, in that one frozen moment, said it all. She knew. And I had finally stopped pretending I didn't. I don't know how long we stared at each other, her frozen, me still as stone, but something passed between us that afternoon. Not anger. Not even fear. It was a moment of quiet clarity. The kind you don't come back from. She didn't touch the flash drive. She didn't ask what was on it. That was all the confirmation I needed. And I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw it at her. I just sat down across the table like it was any other afternoon and whispered, "Should I watch it first, or do you want to explain?" Her hands trembled slightly just for a second as she closed her laptop. "Where did you get that?" "Someone who still has a soul," I said. Elora sat back in her chair, slowly folding her arms like she was deciding whether to lie or confess, weighing the risk like it was a math problem. I saw it all flicker across her face. Regret, calculation, damage control. She looked exhausted, but not from guilt. From losing control. "You think you know what's on that thing, but you don't," she said finally, her voice low. "I'm willing to find out," I replied. I stood, walked over to the side drawer, and took out the old USB to USB-C adapter. She watched every movement like I was loading a weapon. Maybe I was. The laptop screen lit up as I connected the drive. 2 folders. One labeled screenshots. The other audio_conf_room_2. I opened the screenshots first. Hundreds of texts between her and Kellen. Not just flirting, full conversations. Hidden meetings. Passive-aggressive jokes about me. Memes making fun of my cooking, my clothes, even the playlist I made for our anniversary last year. But that wasn't what gutted me. It was the one photo she sent him. A picture of me asleep on the couch, still in my work uniform, mouth slightly open, my glasses tilted on my nose. She captioned it. "Imagine waking up to this every day." My hands curled into fists, but I didn't say a word. I just stared at the screen like I could make it erase itself with enough hatred. "Behind me," she whispered, "I was angry that night. You didn't come to my work party." I turned slowly, meeting her eyes. "You told me not to." She blinked. Once. Then looked down. The audio file was just under 4 minutes. I didn't even hesitate. I clicked play. The recording started with soft static. A bit of background hum. Then her voice. Clear. Confident. Not a hint of shame. "He won't ever leave me. That's the thing. Henry's the safest man on earth. I could cheat on him in our own driveway and he'd probably apologize for making me feel neglected." Laughter followed. Kellen's unmistakably smug. Then his voice, cocky and smooth. "So why stay married at all?" A pause. Then her answer. "Because it looks good. On paper. Makes me seem grounded. And he handles everything. Bills. Groceries. The dog. He's like a built-in house manager. But emotionally? I've been done for years." I stopped the recording. Not because I couldn't handle more, but because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing how hard I was shaking. She stood slowly. "Henry, listen." "No," I cut her off. "Don't do that. Don't pivot. Don't soften your voice like I'm the one who broke this." Tears welled in her eyes. "You're twisting it." "You twisted it," I said, louder this time. "You twisted me." She stepped forward. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. I never meant to, To be heard." I said bitterly. "Because the only thing you're sorry for right now is getting caught." She was crying now. Not sobbing. Not falling apart. But quiet, desperate tears. The kind you use when you want forgiveness without earning it. I didn't move. Didn't reach for her. Didn't ask why. I just stared through her. "You know what's funny?" I said after a long pause. "I always wondered if I was the boring husband. The one people laugh about over drinks. I spent years asking myself if I was the reason you felt restless. And now, she whispered, now I know I was just convenient. She opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand. I'm not here to listen. I'm not here to negotiate. I needed truth, and I got it. I turned off the laptop, yanked the flash drive, and pocketed it. I don't know what happens next, I said, but I do know one thing. She looked up, red-eyed, shaking. You will never speak for me again. You will never decide my silence. And with that, I walked out of the house, not storming, not slamming the door, just walking into the clearest moment of my life. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not my parents. Not my brother. Not my boss. I left my phone on the counter, still unlocked, sitting beside the now silent laptop and the coffee she never finished. It was the only time in my life I wanted to disappear without ceremony. No dramatic exits. No letters. Just absence. You'd be surprised how easy it is to vanish when no one's actually looking for you. Not for you, anyway. They look for your wallet, your signature on bills, your hand on the steering wheel, your login to the Wi-Fi. But you, the person, you can slip out of the life you built like a ghost stepping backward through the walls. I drove for 6 hours straight. No music. No phone. Just the hum of tires on asphalt and the ache in my chest that didn't know whether it was morning or finally breathing. I found a small town by the coast. One of those places where no one cares why you're there, as long as you pay for coffee and don't park like a jerk. I checked into a room above a bakery that smelled like sugar and butter and mornings I thought I'd never taste again. The guy behind the counter gave me a room key and a simple nod. That was it. That's all I wanted. I wasn't running. I was resetting. Back home, wherever that even was now, Alora was probably pacing the living room, spinning a story. Maybe she'd cry into the phone to her friends, claiming I overreacted. Maybe she'd scroll through old photos for evidence that she once loved me, just enough to feel like she still had the moral high ground. Or maybe, just maybe, she'd sit in silence too, and start to hear the echo of everything she destroyed. It took her 2 days to notice I hadn't come back. I know because that's when the emails started coming in. My backup account, the one she didn't know about, was linked to all our joint accounts. Bank alerts, card pings, password reset requests. She was trying to access things that weren't hers anymore. Not really. She didn't know I'd already transferred half the savings into a private account. Legally mine. She didn't know I'd already disconnected the utilities from my name, or that I'd had our joint storage unit locked with a new access code. She also didn't know that I'd already reached out to a lawyer. A quiet, sharp one, the kind who asked me the questions first. That same night, I got an email from her personal account. The subject line just read, "Please don't do this." The message was short, uncharacteristically so. "You don't have to disappear. We can fix this. Please, come home." I didn't reply. She sent another 5 hours later. "I made a mistake, but you're being cruel now. This isn't you." But it was me. The version of me she never bothered to meet. The one who didn't beg, who didn't explain, who didn't try to put the shattered glass back together. The next day she emailed again. Longer this time. Paragraphs. Apologies mixed with rationalizations. She blamed the pressure at work. Her insecurities. Said she felt like she was drowning in routine. She even wrote, "I didn't sleep with him, Henry. Not fully. Not fully." What does that even mean? Is that a new category of betrayal? One where intention matters more than action? Where your loyalty gets measured by the percentage of intimacy you gave away? I didn't respond, because I was finally learning something she never had to. That silence, in the right hands, is louder than any scream. I stayed in that town for 10 more days. I got up with the sun, walked to the beach with coffee, and let the ocean remind me that some things are still honest. I started to eat again. Real food, not the cold leftovers of someone else's life. Then, on the 11th day, something happened. The front desk manager at the inn handed me an envelope. Handwritten. No stamp. "Guy dropped it off an hour ago," he said. Didn't say much. Inside the envelope was a single photograph, printed, not digital. It was of my backyard. At home. Taken the night of the gala. The back porch light was on. And in the lower corner of the photo, almost too blurred to see, was Elora and Kellen, kissing. Not dancing. Not talking. Kissing. I turned the photo over. In tiny print, someone had written, "Now you can stop wondering." No return address. No name. But I didn't need one. The photo said enough. There would be no more explanations. No more arguments. No more pretending. When I returned home 3 days later, I walked into a house that felt like a hotel lobby, clean, cold, and waiting for someone to check out. And Elora? She was there. On the floor. Crying. She was sitting on the floor in our living room, the same room where we used to fall asleep watching documentaries, where we argued about dumb things like thermostat settings and takeout orders, where I once knelt down and asked her to marry me. Now she was there, knees pulled to her chest, sleeves soaked in tears, and the minute I stepped through the doorway she looked up like a child caught scribbling on the walls. There was no greeting. Just that hollow, glassy stare of someone who realized too late that the other person had stopped playing their part. "I didn't think you'd come back," she whispered. "I didn't come back," I said as I dropped my keys onto the counter. "I came to end it properly." She stood up too quickly, stumbled a bit, and caught herself on the coffee table. "Please. Don't say that. We've been through so much. This can't be how it ends." I almost laughed. Almost. Because for someone who claimed to know me, she clearly never understood how final my silences were. "I gave you every opportunity," I said, stepping farther into the room, the photo still folded in my coat pocket. "Every moment to come clean, every chance to say what needed to be said before someone else did it for you." Her mouth opened. Closed. She couldn't tell if I had more, so she just stood there, breathing through panic, trying to build a story fast enough to wrap around the truth I now carried like a blade. "I got the photo," I added calmly. "Of the kiss?" She didn't ask which one. She didn't ask from whom. She just sat back down like her legs gave out beneath her. There was a strange power in that, watching someone who built a lie for so long suddenly realize they had no ground to stand on. "Elora," I said quietly, "you didn't just cheat. You insulted everything I ever was in this house. Every dinner I made. Every rent I paid. Every time I held your hand when you cried over things I couldn't fix. You didn't just fall for someone else. You made sure I was small enough that you could step right over me." She shook her head, tears spilling fast now. "That's not true. I was lost. I thought I needed something else. I didn't know how far it would go." "You're still doing it," I said. "You're still making this about being lost. Like you stumbled into this by accident. You planned this. You hid it. You joked about it. You relied on me being too passive to confront you." I reached into my coat and placed the photo on the table between us. She didn't touch it. "I never hated you," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "Even now, I don't. But I know who you are now. And that's enough." She crossed the distance between us and grabbed my wrist. "I'll change. Please. Just don't leave like this. We can see someone, go to therapy, start over. Please." "You didn't want therapy," I said, pulling my arm away. "You wanted distraction. You wanted to feel alive again. You wanted someone new without doing the hard part of ending what wasn't working." Her lips trembled. "I didn't think you'd ever really walk." "That's the thing, Elora," I said with a hollow smile. "You didn't think I mattered enough to leave." I placed an envelope on the table, sealed and stamped with my lawyer's firm on the corner. She stared at it like it was a death notice. "I already filed," I said. "The day after the audio. This was never about getting even. It was about finally getting free." She dropped into the chair behind her, her whole body shaking now. "We were supposed to grow old together," she whispered. "No," I said, stepping back toward the door. "You were supposed to love me while I was still young." I didn't slam the door behind me. I closed it gently, letting it click shut like the final note of a song I'd been humming for far too long. Out in the car, I sat behind the wheel for a moment, looking at the house, the windows that once glowed with warmth, now nothing but reflection. I didn't feel rage, or triumph, or relief. I felt done, and that was more powerful than anything. I didn't look back after the door closed. Not once. Because I wasn't walking away from her. I was walking toward myself, someone I hadn't seen clearly in a long time. Someone who deserved more than a smile thrown over a shoulder or a hand held only when it was convenient. That evening, I checked into a small rental an hour outside the city, nothing fancy, just a quiet cabin surrounded by trees. The kind of place where you hear crickets instead of traffic and the morning light doesn't fight through curtains, it simply arrives. I spent the first few days in silence. I deleted old texts, unlinked accounts, packed away photos I couldn't bring myself to throw out just yet. I made coffee every morning, even when I didn't feel like drinking it, just because it made the place smell like comfort. And slowly, I began doing the things I used to love, the ones I'd set aside because they didn't fit in our life. I pulled my old guitar out of storage and restrung it. I dusted off a stack of books I'd been meaning to read for years. I sat on the back porch wrapped in a blanket and listened to the wind without checking my phone. No one was waiting for me to explain, to apologize, to shrink myself for their approval. For the first time in years, I wasn't the background character in my own life. Elora messaged a few more times. Long, winding emails filled with remorse, nostalgia, and what-ifs. She said she missed the way I listened. Missed the way I always knew when she needed quiet more than conversation. But I didn't respond. Because it wasn't about missing anymore. It was about knowing. Knowing who she had been. Who I had been. And who I refused to be again. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then another. One morning I drove into the small town nearby and stumbled into a bookstore cafe. A woman behind the counter greeted me with a quiet smile, the kind that didn't try to be charming, just kind. She made me a black coffee and asked if I wanted a recommendation. We chatted about old novels and bad movie adaptations. I didn't tell her anything about my past and she didn't ask. It was nice. Not fireworks. Not fate. Just peace. And maybe that's the point. Maybe healing doesn't come in grand gestures or poetic revenge. Maybe it comes in black coffee, a dusty guitar, and the sound of your own voice echoing back without judgment. I still think about her sometimes. Not with anger. Not with sadness. Just with clarity. She made her choice. And I made mine. The man who walked out of that ballroom was broken. But the man who walks forward now, step by step, page by page, is no longer invisible. He's present. He's whole. And he's finally home.